Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Aries rising. Rule 14 explains that when friendly planets occupy key placements together in a horoscope, they tend to cooperate and enhance one another's effectiveness. This collaboration helps generate more harmonious and fruitful results. However, when enemy planets are placed together, even in auspicious yogas, their lack of compatibility can sabotage the intended outcome, leading to delays, conflicts, or uneven results. Rule 15 states that a planet or house becomes stronger when flanked by natural benefics, Śubha Kartari Yoga, and weaker when hemmed in by natural malefics, Pāpa Kartari Yoga. The condition of the flanking houses, the planets placed in the 2nd and 12th from the given house, greatly influences the ability of that house or planet to deliver its results. Moon in the 4th house, Cancer, flanked by Venus in 3rd and Jupiter in 5th. This is a textbook application of both rules. Moon, ruling the 4th, sits in its own sign, strongly placed. Venus, natural benefic, in the 3rd and Jupiter, natural benefic, in the 5th, create a powerful Śubha Kartari Yoga. The emotional well-being, domestic peace, and maternal influences of the native are deeply protected and enhanced. Additionally, Moon is neutral to both benefics and receives their friendly flanking, fulfilling Rule 14. The result is deep emotional intelligence and psychological balance, especially in home life. Mars in the 10th house, Capricorn, flanked by Saturn in 9th and Rahu in 11th. Mars, the Lagna and 8th lord, is exalted in Capricorn, naturally strengthening its impact. But Saturn, neutral but cold malefic, in the 9th and Rahu, malefic, in the 11th, produce a partial Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Despite exaltation, Mars' expression is hardened, with more effort required to express leadership and initiative. Rule 14 applies in a mixed way. Mars and Saturn are neutral, so cooperation is limited. Rule 15 suggests that while Mars is strong, the hemming will create internal struggle, political entanglements, or delays in professional growth. Mercury in the 5th house, Leo, flanked by Moon in 4th and Ketu in 6th. Mercury rules the 3rd and 6th houses, both functionally malefic for Aries. Placed in Leo, the sign of its friendly planet Sun, Rule 14 gives it room to operate well. However, the flanking is mixed. Moon in the 4th is a benefic influence, but Ketu in the 6th, though not a classical planet, is often considered a malefic disruptor. This creates a subtle imbalance in Rule 15, potentially causing internal confusion or detachment in matters of intellect, children, or speculative interests, despite functional promise. Sun in the 5th house, Leo, flanked by Mercury in 4th and Venus in 6th. Sun is in its own sign, powerfully placed, and rules the 5th, a Kona house. While Mercury is a friend and Venus is an enemy, both are natural benefics. Rule 15 supports this configuration by suggesting Śubha Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 adds complexity. Sun and Mercury are friendly, but Sun and Venus are hostile. So while the house is strengthened overall, there may be ego challenges in romance or with children, despite an outwardly successful creative or leadership streak. Saturn in the 1st house, Aries, flanked by Mars in 12th and Sun in 2nd. This creates a sharp Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Saturn is debilitated in Aries, and both Mars and Sun are natural malefics and enemies of Saturn. Rule 14 confirms a hostile environment for Saturn to function, and Rule 15 amplifies the weakening effect due to harsh flanking. The result may manifest as poor health, delayed recognition, and obstructed self-confidence, unless mitigated by Nichabanga Raja Yoga or aspects from benefics. Jupiter in the 9th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Mars in 8th and Saturn in 10th. Jupiter, an own sign in the 9th, is a powerful dharmic position. Rule 14 shows Mars and Saturn are enemies of Jupiter. Rule 15 indicates their flanking weakens Jupiter's pure expression. Yet since both Mars and Saturn are strong and Jupiter is in Mul Trikona, the spiritual quest remains intact, but may involve trials, discipline, and intensity. The person may gain wisdom through hardship or philosophical struggle. Venus in the 12th house, Pisces, flanked by Saturn in 11th and Mercury in Lagna. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and Rule 14 notes that Mercury is a friend, but Saturn is an enemy. Rule 15 creates mixed flanking, Mercury as benefic neutral, Saturn as cold malefic. While exaltation promotes aesthetic or spiritual refinement, relationships and expenditure could still carry karmic challenges due to the hemming. This may express as beauty through suffering or gains through letting go, typical of exalted Venus under strain. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Leo rising. Rule 14. For Leo ascendant emphasizes how synergy or tension between planetary friendships affects fulfillment of Raja Yogas, Dana Yogas, and life direction. Since Leo is ruled by the sun, an individualistic and authoritative graha, its compatibility with other planets greatly determines whether leadership becomes respected or resented. Rule 15. Kartari Yoga holds special weight here, especially regarding the 1st, 5th, and 10th houses. Benefic hemming reinforces regal presence and expression, while malefic flanking often triggers arrogance, instability in fame, or sudden career setbacks. Sun in the 1st house, Leo, flanked by Moon in 12th and Mercury in 2nd. Sun is the Lagna Lord in its own sign, showing leadership, confidence, and charisma. Rule 15 presents Śubha Kartari Yoga, Moon, benefic, and Mercury, neutral benefic, surround it. Rule 14 shows Sun is friendly with Moon and Mercury, making this a highly supportive formation. The native exhibits strong vitality, clarity of purpose, and recognition from early in life. Emotional intelligence and speech complement their authority with minimal ego distortion. Moon in the 12th house, Cancer, flanked by Saturn in 11th and Sun in 1st. Moon rules the 12th house and sits in its own sign, supporting psychological depth, intuition, and spiritual insight. Rule 15 offers mixed hemming. Saturn, malefic, and Sun, mild malefic, restrict its natural nourishing function. Rule 14 indicates friendship with Sun, but hostility from Saturn. This moon often expresses itself through solitude or foreign influence, but the native may feel emotionally burdened or face disturbed sleep cycles. Creativity thrives in isolation. Mercury in the 2nd house, Virgo, flanked by Sun in 1st and Venus in 3rd. Mercury is exalted in Virgo and rules the 2nd and 11th houses, both Dana Bhavas. Rule 15 displays Śubha Kartari. Sun is neutral, Venus is benefic. Rule 14 shows Mercury is friendly with both. This is a potent placement for wealth through communication, marketing, or trade. The native is articulate, diplomatic, and capable of creating practical strategies to increase value, whether personal or financial. Gains come through clarity and intellect. Venus in the 3rd house, Libra, flanked by Mercury in 2nd and Mars in 4th. Venus is in its own sign and rules the 3rd and 10th houses. Rule 15 gives mixed hemming. Mercury is benefic, Mars is malefic. Rule 14 shows Venus is friends with Mercury and enemies with Mars. Artistic communication and social elegance are empowered, but early education or sibling relationships may carry friction. Career pursuits related to beauty, media, or diplomacy are strong if Mars is neutralized. Mars in the 4th house, Scorpio, flanked by Venus in 3rd and Jupiter in 5th. Mars rules the 4th and 9th houses and is placed in its own sign, excellent for courage, engineering, and protection of home or values. Flanked by Venus and Jupiter, both benefics, Rule 15 gives a textbook Śubha Kartari. Rule 14 adds that Mars is neutral to Jupiter and hostile to Venus. The result is a confident, assertive individual with philosophical grounding. They may have a strong attachment to homeland, and emotional depth informs their moral compass. Jupiter in the 5th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Mars in 4th and Saturn in 6th. Jupiter is in own sign and rules the 5th and 8th houses. Rule 15 gives mixed flanking, Mars, neutral malefic, and Saturn, malefic, creating a mild Pāpa Kartari. Rule 14 shows Jupiter is neutral to Mars and Saturn, so outcomes depend on additional strength. This position favors learning, dharma, and high intellect, but the influence of Saturn and 8th lordship may bring delayed blessings in children, education, or love. Still, long-term spiritual growth is strong. Saturn in the 6th house, Capricorn, flanked by Jupiter in 5th and Moon in 7th. Saturn is exalted in Capricorn and rules the 6th and 7th for Leo, making it partially functional malefic. Rule 15 reveals Śubha Kartari. Jupiter and Moon flank Saturn, stabilizing its harsh nature. Rule 14 shows neutrality with Jupiter and friendliness with Moon. This configuration grants disciplined handling of enemies, debts, and obligations. Marriage may be delayed but strong, with a realistic view on partnerships and karmic dues being repaid with grace. Rahu in the 9th house, Aries, flanked by Mars in 8th and Jupiter in 10th. Rahu here craves spiritual identity, foreign status, and visionary independence. Rule 15 shows flanking by Mars and Jupiter, malefic and benefic respectively. While Rule 14 doesn't apply directly to nodes, Rahu in Mars's sign, enemy, can exaggerate ego or false dharma. However, Jupiter in the 10th steadies this, giving potential for rise through unconventional teaching, legal, or entrepreneurial paths, if higher principles are honored. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Sagittarius rising. Rule 14 gains nuanced expression for Sagittarius ascendant because Jupiter, a sattvic benefic, rules both the 1st and 4th houses. Friendships among planets like Sun and Mars support expansion and dharma, while enemies like Venus and Mercury often bring subtle ideological or relational tensions, even in yogas. Rule 15 strongly influences Sagittarius's fire-driven temperament. Benefic hemming supports noble expression, long-term goals, and teaching roles. Malefic flanking, however, can create rigid beliefs, sudden setbacks, or moral imbalances, especially in dharmic houses like the 5th, 9th, and 10th. Jupiter in the 1st house, Sagittarius, flanked by Ketu in 12th and Saturn in 2nd. Jupiter in Mul Trikona in Lagna is highly favorable, blessing the native with wisdom, optimism, and moral character. Rule 15 offers mixed flanking, Ketu malefic and Saturn malefic, forming a Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows Jupiter is neutral to Saturn and independent of Ketu, yet the impact here may lead to philosophical solitude, austerity and wealth, and early life pressure to be responsible. The native has inner strength, but may feel isolated or burdened by spiritual duty. Mars in the 4th house, Pisces, flanked by Venus in 3rd and Mercury in 5th. Mars rules the 5th and 12th houses and sits in Pisces, a neutral sign. Rule 15 gives a mixed hemming, Venus, enemy, and Mercury, enemy, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 confirms Mars's hostility with both flanking planets. This can agitate inner peace, create frustration around land, property, and build pressure around academic performance or child rearing. While Mars tries to energize the emotional core, constant misunderstanding or restlessness may cloud domestic life. Mercury in the 5th house, Aries, flanked by Mars in 4th and Rahu in 6th. Mercury rules the 7th and 10th houses, both Kendra and career-linked. Here, in Aries' enemy sign, and flanked by malefics Mars and Rahu, Rule 15 shows classic Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 reveals Mars and Mercury are enemies, and Rahu destabilizes. Despite ruling critical career and relational houses, Mercury's logic and speech may turn aggressive, argumentative, or overly strategic. Still, strong aspects from Jupiter or Sun can transform this into persuasive talent in leadership or strategy fields. Venus in the 7th house, Gemini, flanked by Rahu in 6th and Sun in 8th. Venus rules the 6th and 11th houses and sits in a neutral sign, Gemini. Rule 15 again shows Pāpa Kartari hemming, Rahu and Sun are malefics. Rule 14 reveals that Venus is hostile to Sun and deeply unstable with Rahu's influence. This is a sensitive placement for partnerships and public relations. Marriage may seem ideal at first, but face karmic challenges or hidden dissatisfaction. Strong Mercury aspects can neutralize some instability and lend communicative charm. Moon in the 9th house, Leo, flanked by Saturn in 8th and Jupiter in 10th. Moon rules the 8th and sits in the sign of the Sun, its friend. Rule 15 gives mixed flanking, Saturn, malefic, and Jupiter, benefic. Rule 14 shows Moon is friendly with Jupiter and moderately compatible with Saturn. This creates a sincere seeker of knowledge, where faith and higher learning are fueled by both trials, Saturn, and hope, Jupiter. While emotional ups and downs may occur through father figures or teachers, the spiritual path strengthens with age. Sun in the 10th house, Virgo, flanked by Moon in 9th and Mercury in 11th. Sun rules the 9th house and sits in Virgo, ruled by Mercury, its friendly sign. Rule 15 shows strong Śubha Kartari Yoga. Moon and Mercury are both benefics. Rule 14 confirms Sun is friendly with both flanking planets. This is one of the most auspicious placements for career, authority, and societal visibility. The native commands respect with intellect and ethical strength, possibly in administration, teaching, or media. Clear purpose and high competence are hallmarks of this setup. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Taurus rising. Rule 14 remains vital in analyzing the synergy or friction between planetary placements. Mutual friends placed together help amplify constructive energy and cooperate toward favorable karma. Conversely, when planetary enemies co-occupy or aspect each other, even in yogas, their internal friction reduces the promised strength or delays benefits. Rule 15 Chan continues to assess planetary dignity based on their flanking neighbors. A planet or house hemmed between benefics, Shubha Kartari, gets shielded and empowered, while being trapped between malefics, Pāpa Kartari, leads to stress, isolation, or inefficacy in the matters it governs. Moon in the third house, Cancer, flanked by Mercury in second and Sun in fourth. Moon rules the third and is in its own sign, giving emotional courage and intuitive communication. Flanked by Mercury, natural benefic, and Sun, mild malefic, Rule 15 forms a partial Shubha Kartari, leaning toward stability. Rule 14 adds that Moon and Mercury are neutral, Moon and Sun are friendly. Overall, this setting supports sibling relations, expression through writing or media, and fosters emotional balance with slight ego fluctuations. Jupiter in the 8th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Venus in 7th and Saturn in 9th. For Taurus, Jupiter rules the 8th and 11th. Here, it sits in its own sign, bringing controlled access to hidden knowledge and gains from in-laws, insurance, or inheritance. Saturn, natural malefic, and Venus, natural benefic, create a balancing influence per Rule 15. Rule 14 notes Jupiter and Venus are enemies, while Saturn is neutral. Despite this, Jupiter's ownership of the 11th ensures some expansion. This combination grants occult wisdom, but spiritual growth may come through losses or complex relationships. Mercury in the 2nd house, Gemini, flanked by Ketu in 1st and Moon in 3rd. Mercury is an own sign and rules the 2nd and 5th houses, making this a strong Dana Yoga position. Rule 15 offers a mixed influence. Ketu is malefic and Moon is a benefic. Rule 14 favors this, as Mercury and Moon are friends. This placement supports intelligent speech, writing talents, and memory. But Ketu's influence may bring moments of loss of clarity or speech disorders unless well aspected or supported by Jupiter. Mars in the 9th house, Capricorn, flanked by Jupiter in 8th and Rahu in 10th. Mars is exalted and rules the 7th and 12th for Taurus. Rule 12, exaltation context, would warn of overactivation of 12th house matters, expenditure losses, but Rule 15 now reveals flanking by Jupiter and Rahu, one benefic, one shadow malefic. Rule 14 adds tension. Mars and Jupiter are neutral, but Rahu amplifies instability. Despite exaltation, this Mars may drive strong philosophical ambition and foreign connections, but also power struggles and fame issues in public life. Sun in the 3rd house, Cancer, flanked by Venus in 2nd and Mercury in 4th. Sun is a natural malefic but rules the 4th house, a Kendra. Though placed in an enemy sign, Cancer, it is flanked by Venus and Mercury, both natural benefics, forming a clear Shubha Kartari. Rule 15 uplifts the house, and Rule 14, while showing Venus as enemy to Sun, confirms Mercury's friendly aspect helps. The natives' communication and courage rise, and leadership may express through education or media, though occasional emotional reactivity is possible. Saturn in the 10th house, Aquarius, flanked by Mars in 9th and Jupiter in 11th. Saturn owns the 9th and 10th houses, both powerful for Taurus, and is an own sign. This is a high-quality Raja Yoga builder. Mars, malefic, and Jupiter, benefic flank it, creating a mixed hemming per Rule 15. Rule 14 adds neutrality from Jupiter and hostility from Mars. Despite challenges, this is a karma-centric placement where responsibility, delay, and sustained effort bring rewards. Career maturity comes after Saturn return age. Venus in the 1st house, Taurus, flanked by no planets, no hemming. Venus is an own sign and rules both the Lagna and the 6th. No flanking removes Rule 15's effect, but Rule 14 applies through its relations to aspects. Venus here radiates charm, stability, and aesthetic strength. If aspected by friends like Mercury or Jupiter, results are elevated. However, if enemies like Mars or Saturn aspect Venus here, relationships or health could suffer, especially concerning indulgence or beauty. Ketu in the 11th house, Pisces, flanked by Jupiter in 10th and Venus in 12th. Ketu, being a shadow graha, gains or loses based on its flanking and sign lord. Rule 15 shows benefic flanking, Jupiter and Venus, offering spiritualized gains and karmic social networks. Rule 14 does not apply directly to nodes, but the association with Jupiter, Pisces ruler, gives mysticism, intuition, and ability to gain through detachment. This placement supports charitable works, mystical income streams, or gains through hidden sources. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Virgo rising. Rule 14. In the context of Virgo ascendant, must carefully assess the dual rulership of Mercury, which governs both the 1st and 10th houses. Planets friendly to Mercury support practical intelligence, service orientation, and career growth, while enemies like Mars may produce tension even in yogas. Rule 15.9 is crucial for Virgo, as it's an earthy and detail-driven sign. Benefic hemming improves precision, routine, and healing potential. Malefic hemming disrupts mental clarity, bodily vitality, or relationship trust. The effect is often seen strongly in houses like 1st, 4th, 6th, and 10th. Mercury in the 1st house, Virgo, flanked by Sun in 12th and Venus in 2nd. Mercury is exalted in Virgo and rules both the ascendant and the 10th house. This is one of the most Yogacaraka-like placements for Virgo natives. Rule 15 shows Shubha Kartari Yoga, flanked by Venus, benefic, and Sun, mild malefic. Rule 14 confirms Mercury is friendly with both. This position blesses the native with keen intellect, clean articulation, and refined appearance. They may be highly sought in fields like medicine, analytics, or education. Sun in the 12th house, Leo, flanked by Saturn in 11th and Mercury in 1st. Sun is in its own sign, which gives inner authority and solitude-driven strength. Rule 15 is mixed, Saturn, malefic, and Mercury, benefic. Rule 14 shows Mercury and Sun are friends, but Saturn is an enemy to both. This configuration often leads to administrative ability in foreign lands or institutions. However, hidden enemies, ego isolation, or paternal challenges may shadow early success unless Saturn is well aspected. Moon in the 11th house, Cancer, flanked by Ketu in 10th and Sun in 12th. Moon is an own sign and rules the 11th. Natural gains and social fulfillment are strong. Yet Rule 15 gives a mild Pāpa Kartari. Ketu and Sun flank the Moon. Rule 14 adds that Moon is friendly with Sun but indifferent to Ketu. This native may receive wealth and emotional support through networks, but could feel strangely detached from friendships or experience cyclical gains and losses due to psychological inconsistency. Venus in the 2nd house, Libra, flanked by Mercury in 1st and Mars in 3rd. Venus rules the 2nd and 9th houses, both wealth and dharma. In own sign Libra, its dignity is high. Rule 15 shows mixed hemming, Mercury, friend, and Mars, enemy. Rule 14 confirms Venus is aligned with Mercury but hostile to Mars. This supports pleasant speech, financial elegance, and artistry, but Mars can create friction in self-expression or sibling dynamics unless tempered by Jupiter's aspect. Mars in the 3rd house, Scorpio, flanked by Venus in 2nd and Jupiter in 4th. Mars rules the 3rd and 8th houses and sits in its own sign, strengthening initiative, courage, and technical abilities. Rule 15 shows Shubha Kartari. Venus and Jupiter are both benefics. Rule 14 states Mars is enemies with Venus but neutral to Jupiter. Despite the friction with Venus, Jupiter balances the assertiveness, giving focused energy, mechanical skills, and deep inquiry. Good for research, surgery, and competitive communication. Jupiter in the 4th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Mars in 3rd and Saturn in 5th. Jupiter owns the 4th and 7th houses and sits in own sign. This supports ethical foundation, higher education, and nourishing values. However, Mars and Saturn, both malefics, hem it, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows Jupiter is neutral to Mars and Saturn. While the placement is fundamentally strong, there may be challenges in early education, strained domestic life, or philosophical tension until maturity or benefic aspects intervene. Saturn in the 5th house, Capricorn, flanked by Jupiter in 4th and Moon in 6th. Saturn rules the 5th and 6th houses and sits in own sign, granting serious intellect, delayed creativity, and karmic parenting. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking. Jupiter benefic and Moon benefic surround it, producing Shubha Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows Saturn's neutral relationship to both. This setup supports persistence in studies, long-term wealth through skill, and mastery of health systems or litigation. Emotional development may be slow but strong. Rahu in the 8th house, Aries, flanked by Ketu in 7th and Jupiter in 9th. Rahu in the 8th often amplifies occult curiosity, inheritance matters, and psychological transformation. Rule 15 offers a dynamic mix, Ketu, malefic, behind and Jupiter, benefic ahead. While Rule 14 does not directly apply to nodes, Jupiter's flanking helps spiritualize the Rahu drive. If well aspected, this can result in profound breakthroughs in research or metaphysical growth, but when afflicted, secrecy or compulsive behavior can arise. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Capricorn rising. Rule 14 is especially strategic for Capricorn ascendants, since Saturn, its Lagna lord, is a natural malefic and slow mover. It gains through friendships with Mercury and Venus, but struggles with enemies like Sun and Moon. The outcomes of yogas and house rulerships depend heavily on whether cooperation or conflict is active among planets. Rule 15 takes a central role in stabilizing or stressing Capricorn's controlled and structured nature. Benefic hemming enhances discipline and long-term planning, especially in Kendras and Konas. Malefic hemming, however, often leads to harsh responsibilities, emotional coldness, or karmic hardship in key domains like marriage, career, or education. Saturn in the 1st house, Capricorn, flanked by Ketu in 12th and Jupiter in 2nd. Saturn in own sign in Lagna gives stability, endurance, and maturity. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking, Ketu malefic and Jupiter benefic. Rule 14 tells us Saturn is neutral to Jupiter and largely unaided by Ketu. This configuration produces a stoic, self-reliant personality. Jupiter in the 2nd brings wealth and value-based decisions, balancing Saturn's detachment. But Ketu can cause self-isolation, making the native wise, yet emotionally distant. Mars in the 4th house, Aries, flanked by Venus in 3rd and Mercury in 5th. Mars rules the 4th and 11th and is exalted in Aries. Rule 15 gives Śubha Kartari Yoga, flanked by Venus and Mercury, both benefics. Rule 14 shows Mars is hostile to Venus and Mercury, yet benefic flanking softens its aggression. This native is driven to secure property, motherly care, and achievements through assertive means. Although there may be emotional tension at home, success is visible in real estate, security, or leadership roles involving mass responsibility. Mercury in the 5th house, Taurus, flanked by Mars in 4th and Sun in 6th. Mercury rules the 6th and 9th houses and sits in a friendly sign Venus ruled. Rule 15 shows hemming by Mars and Sun, both natural malefics, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 notes Mercury is an enemy to Mars and neutral to Sun. While Mercury is mentally sharp and dharmically positioned, its flanking induces intellectual pressure, debates with children or in creative spheres, and health-related stress. Competitive exams, analytics, or strategic learning thrive here, but without peace. Venus in the 7th house, Cancer, flanked by Rahu in 6th and Sun in 8th. Venus rules the 5th and 10th houses and sits in Cancer, a sign of its enemy, the Moon. Rule 15 indicates strong Pāpa Kartari, hemmed by Rahu and Sun. Rule 14 confirms Venus's conflict with both flanking planets. This often causes turbulence in marriage, power struggles in business alliances, or emotional dissatisfaction in romantic life. Yet, if Moon or Jupiter aspects this Venus, emotional healing, career-based relationships, or creative counseling become routes to resolution. Moon in the 9th house, Virgo, flanked by Saturn in 8th and Jupiter in 10th. Moon rules the 7th and is in Virgo, ruled by Mercury, its enemy. Rule 15 is mixed. Saturn, malefic behind, Jupiter, benefic ahead. Rule 14 shows Moon is neutral to Saturn and friendly to Jupiter. The result is an emotionally intellectual person with deep interest in philosophy and dharma, but someone who may feel loss or betrayal in partnerships. Jupiter softens this, providing healing through teaching, writing, or spiritual learning, especially related to foreign or judicial matters. Sun in the 10th house, Libra, flanked by Moon in 9th and Mercury in 11th. Sun rules the 8th and is debilitated in Libra. Rule 15, however, offers Śubha Kartari hemming. Moon and Mercury are both benefics. Rule 14 notes Sun is friendly with Moon and neutral to Mercury. Though debilitated, this Sun is supported by context. The person can achieve great success in research, occult, or behind-the-scenes leadership. The career path often involves transformation or deep reform, with grace earned through emotional intelligence and networking skills. Jupiter in the second house, Aquarius, flanked by Saturn in first and Mars in third. Jupiter rules the third and 12th and sits in Saturn's sign, a neutral zone. Rule 15 gives Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Saturn and Mars, both malefics, flank it. Rule 14 shows Jupiter is neutral to both, but Mars can induce speech or family friction. This Jupiter has knowledge and value systems tested by real-world demands. Gains may come from education, language, or finance after hard-earned wisdom. Connection to spiritual vocations is strong when Jupiter is well aspected. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Gemini rising. Rule 14 highlights the importance of planetary friendships in cooperative outcomes. When friendly planets are involved in placements, aspects, or conjunctions, their ability to coordinate brings smoother manifestations of yogas or house results. But when enemies are involved, even if the individual planets are strong, their conflicting agendas dilute or delay the benefits. Rule 15 focuses on Cartari effects. Planets or houses that are flanked, hemmed in by benefics, gain protective and empowering support, while those hemmed in by malefics are weakened or obstructed. This hemming principle applies across all 12 houses and can enhance or limit even exalted or multrikona placements. Mercury in the first house, Gemini, flanked by Moon in second and Sun in 12th. Mercury rules the first and fourth houses and is placed in own sign, very favorable for intellect, communication, and adaptability. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking, Sun mild malefic and Moon natural benefic. Rule 14 adds depth. Mercury is friendly with the Moon and neutral to the Sun. This mix indicates quick mental clarity and emotional perceptiveness, with some unconscious stress or sleep disruptions from Sun in the 12th. Still, overall, Mercury is quite effective here. Jupiter in the 7th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Mars in 6th and Saturn in 8th. Jupiter rules the 7th and 10th houses, powerful for career and partnerships. Sitting in its multrikona, it is inherently strong. However, Mars, malefic, and Saturn, malefic, flank it, creating a classic Pāpa Kartari Yoga per Rule 15. Rule 14 adds that Jupiter is neutral to both, but may struggle to harmonize with them. The result? While Jupiter promotes ethical and expansive relationships, they come with trials, karmic debts, or power imbalances, especially in marriage or business. Moon in the second house, Cancer, flanked by Mercury in first and Venus in third. Moon is an own sign, stable, nurturing, and emotionally expressive. Rule 15 shows flanking by two benefics, Mercury and Venus. This is a clear Śubha Kartari effect, enhancing the native's communication, speech, financial intuition, and emotional intelligence. Rule 14 notes, Moon is neutral to Mercury and friendly with Venus, indicating high-quality nurturing instincts and harmonious family values. Mars in the 6th house, Scorpio, flanked by Rahu in 5th and Jupiter in 7th. Mars rules the 6th and 11th houses and sits in its own sign, creating a strong Vikram Yoga, victory in competition. But Rule 15 gives a mixed hemming, Rahu and Jupiter. Rule 14 confirms Mars and Jupiter are neutral, but Rahu acts erratically. While this configuration builds strong fighting spirit, drive, and resistance to disease, it also invites unexpected political or relationship friction, especially from ideological or ethical conflicts. Venus in the 4th house, Virgo, flanked by Sun in 3rd and Mars in 5th. Venus is debilitated in Virgo, and Rule 12 would already reduce its strength. Rule 15 further complicates matters. Sun and Mars are both natural malefics, creating a Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 notes Venus and Sun are enemies, and Venus is neutral to Mars. This setting may create emotional discontent in home life, difficulties in expressing affection, or imbalances in material comforts unless Nichabanga Raja Yoga or strong Jupiter aspects intervene. Saturn in the 9th house, Aquarius, flanked by Jupiter in 8th and Mercury in 10th. Saturn owns the 8th and 9th and sits in its own multrikona sign. Flanked by Jupiter, benefic, and Mercury, benefic, Rule 15 forms Śubha Kartari Yoga, strengthening dharmic beliefs, patience in spiritual pursuit, and wise karma. Rule 14 adds that Saturn and Jupiter are neutral, while Saturn and Mercury are friendly. The result? The individual's worldview is disciplined, philosophical, and grounded in long-term effort and responsibility. Sun in the 12th house, Taurus, flanked by Venus in 11th and Mercury in 1st. Sun rules the 3rd house, a minor upachaya, and sits in an enemy sign. However, Rule 15 shows it is flanked by two benefics, Venus and Mercury, forming a Śubha Kartari. Rule 14 confirms Mercury is a friend and Venus is an enemy to Sun. While the placement may bring isolation in early confidence or strained authority, over time, the Cartari protection elevates inner strength, behind-the-scenes influence, and artistic or media-related self-expression. Rahu in the 5th house, Libra, flanked by Venus in 4th and Mars in 6th. Rahu in the 5th can distort creativity or bring unconventional ideas. Rule 15 shows a neutral flanking. Venus is friendly and Mars is hostile. Rule 14 doesn't directly apply to nodes but helps to interpret quality. This may lead to a mind that is brilliant but intense, creative genius with anxiety or rebellious tendencies in love, children, or speculative matters. The Venus influence keeps Rahu's shadow somewhat refined, especially in art or diplomacy. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Libra rising. Rule holds particular weight for Libra ascendant because Venus, the ascendant lord, is a natural benefic that depends heavily on planetary friendships to thrive. Planets that are friendly or neutral to Venus, like Mercury and Saturn, typically support harmony, diplomacy, and aesthetics, while hostile planets, like the Sun and Mars, can disrupt peace and inner balance. Rule 15 becomes crucial when evaluating how benefic or malefic hemming alters Venusian placements. Shubha Kartari Yogas boost charm, wealth, and relationship capacity, while Pāpa Kartari Yogas can cause internal disharmony, delayed success, or strained partnerships, especially in Kendras or the Lagna. Venus in the 1st house, Libra, flanked by Ketu in 12th and Mercury in 2nd. Venus is in its Mul Trikona, making this one of the most auspicious placements for Libra Lagna. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking, Ketu malefic behind, Mercury benefic ahead. Rule 14 shows Mercury is a friend to Venus, and Ketu, though a shadowy influence, is often neutral. The personality is charming, artistically refined, and socially graceful, but Ketu's influence may cause periods of spiritual detachment or over-idealism. Still, the benefic support from Mercury sustains Venusian growth in wealth and personal style. Mercury in the 2nd house, Scorpio, flanked by Venus in 1st and Sun in 3rd. Mercury rules the 9th and 12th houses and is placed in Scorpio, where it is debilitated. However, Rule 15 shows a benefic mixed hemming, Venus, friend, and Sun, enemy. Rule 14 adds that Mercury is friendly with Venus, but hostile to Sun, creating a slightly unstable intellectual voice. Speech may carry intensity, but communication can turn sharp or defensive unless supported by Jupiter or Moon. Financial and philosophical views may fluctuate but are mentally agile. Sun in the 3rd house, Sagittarius, flanked by Mercury in 2nd and Moon in 4th. Sun rules the 11th and sits in the 3rd house, both upachayas. Rule 15 reveals Śubha Kartari Yoga, Mercury and Moon are both natural benefics. Rule 14 shows Sun is friendly with Moon and Mercury, making this a powerful placement for courage, travel, or media-oriented careers. The native possesses self-expression, valor, and networking ability, though ego needs refinement. The flanking helps the Sun maintain steadiness and creative force. Moon in the 4th house, Capricorn, flanked by Sun in 3rd and Mars in 5th. Moon is debilitated in Capricorn and rules the 10th house. Rule 15 gives it Pāpa Kartari hemming. Sun and Mars are malefics. Rule 14 shows Moon is friendly with Sun but hostile to Mars. This can lead to an emotionally rigid interior life, where ambitions and social image are shaped by emotional suppression. The nurturing environment might be duty-bound or emotionally dry, but discipline and eventual maturity can reverse early discomfort. Mars in the 5th house, Aquarius, flanked by Moon in 4th and Jupiter in 6th. Mars rules the 2nd and 7th houses, and here it sits in an enemy sign, Aquarius. Rule 15 gives balanced flanking, Moon, benefic, and Jupiter, benefic, forming Śubha Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows Mars is hostile to Moon but neutral to Jupiter. This combination boosts competitiveness in creative pursuits and intelligence fields, possibly law, surgery, or entrepreneurship. Though relationships may carry power dynamics, the support from benefics gives this Mars noble ambition and resilience. Jupiter in the 6th house, Pisces, flanked by Mars in 5th and Saturn in 7th. Jupiter rules the 3rd and 6th and sits in own sign, functionally malefic but strong in dignity. Rule 15 displays mixed flanking, Mars, malefic, and Saturn, malefic, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows Jupiter is neutral to both. This positioning brings intelligence in handling enemies, but legal, health, or debt issues may require effort to overcome. Wisdom develops through struggle and humility, and spiritual service becomes a possible path for remedy. Saturn in the 7th house, Aries, flanked by Jupiter in 6th and Rahu in 8th. Saturn is debilitated in Aries and rules the 4th and 5th houses. Rule 15 shows harsh hemming. Jupiter and Rahu flank Saturn. Rule 14 confirms that Saturn is neutral to Jupiter but suffers from Rahu's unpredictable influence. Marital or business partnerships may bring burdens, coldness, or karmic difficulty unless there's nichabhanga or benefic aspects. This Saturn grants loyalty and structure, but at the cost of emotional dryness or delay. Rahu in the 8th house, Taurus, flanked by Saturn in 7th and Venus in 9th. Rahu in the 8th tends to obsess over secrets, survival, and control. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking, Saturn malefic and Venus benefic. Venus is the ascendant lord, and its influence helps elevate Rahu's cravings into artistic or spiritual breakthroughs. While Saturn restricts and tests, Venus guides with beauty and higher values. The result is someone capable of transformation through crisis and potential mastery of esoteric knowledge, finance, or psychology. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Aquarius rising. Rule 14 becomes analytically rich for Aquarius ascendants, as Saturn, the Lagna Lord, is a natural malefic that governs both the 1st and 12th houses. It is friendly with Mercury and Venus but opposed to Sun and Moon. So, any placements involving these enemies, especially in Kendra or Kona, need careful evaluation for tension between responsibility and vitality. Rule 15 takes on deeper impact since Aquarius has a fixed air nature, idealistic but prone to stubbornness or aloofness. Benefic flanking fosters futuristic vision and social alignment. Malefic hemming, however, can bring alienation, poor health habits, or delays in self-expression, particularly in relationships and public career. Saturn in the 1st house, Aquarius, flanked by Ketu in 12th and Jupiter in 2nd. Saturn is in Multrikona in Lagna, granting patience, social idealism, and intellectual detachment. Rule 15 shows mixed hemming, Ketu, malefic, and Jupiter benefic. Rule 14 confirms Jupiter as neutral and Ketu as a destabilizer. The native has a calm, mature persona, but Ketu may cause hidden fears or a tendency to detach from worldly desires. Still, the presence of Jupiter supports rational values, moral vision, and public credibility, especially with strong Venus or Mercury influence. Venus in the 4th house, Taurus, flanked by Rahu in 3rd and Sun in 5th. Venus rules the 4th and 9th houses and sits in own sign Taurus, making it very strong for emotional balance, aesthetics, and motherly support. Rule 15 shows a flanking of Rahu, malefic, and Sun, enemy, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 reminds us Venus is an enemy of the Sun and incompatible with Rahu. Emotional life, peace at home, or property matters may suffer from unrest or pride issues, but this Venus still brings refined taste, maternal connections, and grounding if Jupiter aspects. Sun in the 5th house, Gemini, flanked by Venus in 4th and Mercury in 6th. Sun rules the 7th and sits in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, its friend. Rule 15 provides mixed hemming, Venus enemy and Mercury friend. Rule 14 confirms a balanced friendship-enmity dynamic. This Sun offers intellectual creativity, charm in romantic life, and mental radiance. However, flanking by Venus can cause ego blocks in relationships, and Mercury's 6th house rulership may manifest as competitiveness. Still, the placement supports leadership in education or writing, especially with a strong Lagna. Mercury in the 5th house, Gemini, flanked by Sun in 4th and Moon in 6th. Mercury rules the 5th and 8th houses and is in its own sign. Rule 15 gives a malefic mixed flanking, Sun friend and Moon enemy. Rule 14 shows Mercury's harmony with Sun but tension with Moon. This gives intelligence in wit in creative or speculative domains, but emotional decision-making may cloud logic. Still, the overall placement enhances writing, humor, or teaching abilities, and supports analytical fields like finance or diagnostics. Moon in the ninth house, Libra, flanked by Saturn in 8th and Jupiter in 10th. Moon rules the 6th and sits in Venus's sign, friendly territory. Rule 15 gives Śubha Kartari Yoga, Saturn, neutral, and Jupiter, benefic. Rule 14 shows Moon is friendly to Jupiter and neutral to Saturn. This gives a philosophical, justice-seeking personality, one who finds peace through moral learning and foreign or spiritual travels. Despite Moon's 6th lordship, the flanking purifies its function, supporting inner vision, ethics, and idealistic service. Jupiter in the 10th house, Scorpio, flanked by Moon in 9th and Mars in 11th. Jupiter rules the 2nd and 11th houses and sits in Mars's sign, neutral ground. Rule 15 gives a balanced flanking, Moon, benefic, and Mars, malefic. Rule 14 shows Jupiter is friendly with Moon and neutral to Mars. This Jupiter gives power in public roles, education, and ethical finance. While Mars adds ambition and drive, it may also introduce competition or aggressive ambition. The Moon lends conscience and dignity, helping the native use status to serve causes or uplift society. Mars in the 10th house, Scorpio, flanked by Jupiter in 9th and Saturn in 11th. Mars rules the 3rd and 10th and is an own sign, highly dignified and career-oriented. Rule 15 gives Śubha Kartari Yoga, flanked by Jupiter, benefic, and Saturn, neutral. Rule 14 states Mars is neutral to Jupiter and friendly with Saturn. This is a powerhouse placement for executive success, technical mastery, and transformational leadership. Mars works persistently and with focus, producing public impact, social rise, or reforms, especially when paired with Jupiter's vision. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects. Cancer rising continues to emphasize that the nature of planetary relationships shapes their cooperation. When mutual friends coexist in powerful placements or aspects, their synergy supports the chart's positive expressions. But when mutual enemies are forced into combination, even in yogas, they may obstruct or distort the results. Rule 15 evaluates the health of a planet or house through the lens of Cartari Yoga. Benefic flanking uplifts, Śubha Kartari, while malefic flanking restricts, Pāpa Kartari. This principle becomes especially crucial for sensitive houses like the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, or for planets already under stress by dignity. Moon in the 1st house, Cancer, flanked by Sun in 12th and Mercury in 2nd, Moon is the Lagna Lord and placed in its own sign, deeply rooted and emotionally sensitive. It is flanked by Sun and Mercury. Per Rule 15, this is a mixed Cartari. Sun is malefic, Mercury is benefic. Rule 14 adds that Moon is neutral to Mercury and friendly with Sun, though combust proximity may still weaken outcomes. The result is a native with caring instincts and emotional resilience, but occasional mood fluctuations or sleep challenges due to 12th house Sun. Venus in the 3rd house, Virgo debilitation, flanked by Mercury in 2nd and Mars in 4th. Venus rules the 4th and 11th for Cancer ascendant, and its debilitation in Virgo weakens both comfort and social pleasures. Rule 15 makes it worse. It's hemmed by Mercury, neutral benefic, and Mars, malefic, creating a mild Pāpa Kartari. Rule 14 confirms Venus is neutral to Mercury, but inimical to Mars. This weakens expression in artistic pursuits and relationships with siblings or maternal figures, unless Nichabanga or Jupiter's influence is present. Jupiter in the 6th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Moon in 5th and Saturn in 7th. Jupiter rules the 6th and 9th and sits in its mul trikona. Rule 14 shows Moon and Saturn are both neutral to Jupiter. Rule 15 reveals a balanced flanking, benefic Moon and malefic Saturn, thus a semi-Śubha Kartari. Jupiter here provides dharmic courage to face adversity, but the Saturn influence in the 7th may challenge partnerships. The result is a practical, patient, and ethically grounded approach to handling enemies and debts. Mars in the 4th house, Libra, flanked by Venus in 3rd and Jupiter in 5th. Mars rules the 5th and 10th, and here sits in the sign of Venus, its enemy. Despite the difficult dignity, Rule 15 offers strong support, hemmed by benefics Venus and Jupiter. This is a textbook Śubha Kartari Yoga, strengthening Mars's execution capacity in home, real estate, or structured education. Rule 14 reminds us that Venus is an enemy to Mars, but Jupiter is neutral, making this a karmic mix of tension and opportunity. Mars here may act as a disciplined builder or protector. Mercury in the second house, Leo, flanked by Moon in first and Venus in third. Mercury owns the third and 12th houses and is placed in Leo, ruled by Sun, its friend. Rule 14 supports that Mercury is friendly with the Lord of the sign and flanked by Moon and Venus, both benefics. Rule 15 confirms a Śubha Kartari Yoga. This enhances speech, memory, and writing skills, but the 12th house rulership may still cause some overthink or detachment. Overall, communication becomes refined and wealth generation may involve education or expression. Saturn in the 7th house, Capricorn, flanked by Jupiter in 6th and Sun in 8th. Saturn owns the 7th and 8th houses and sits in its own sign, Capricorn, very strong for commitment and responsibility in partnerships. Rule 15 shows flanking by Jupiter, benefic, and Sun, malefic, producing mixed hemming. Rule 14 adds complexity. Saturn is neutral to Jupiter and inimical to Sun. This may bring mature but delayed marriage, heavy responsibility in business, and karmic lessons from partnership. The influence of Sun in the 8th also suggests sudden changes or power dynamics. Sun in the 12th house, Gemini, flanked by Saturn in 11th and Moon in 1st. Sun rules the 2nd house and is placed in Gemini, a neutral sign. It is hemmed between Saturn and Moon. Rule 15 gives mixed flanking. Saturn is malefic, Moon is benefic, making the result ambiguous. Rule 14 reminds us Sun and Saturn are enemies, while Sun is friendly with Moon. This configuration can produce a quiet but internally ambitious native, someone who seeks private success or works in background roles, often in administration or diplomacy. Rahu in the 10th house, Aries, flanked by Ketu in 9th and Jupiter in 11th. Rahu here aims for career dominance and ambitious reputation building. Rule 15 offers a curious blend. Ketu is malefic and detaching, while Jupiter is expansive and dharmic. While Rule 14 doesn't directly apply to nodes, Jupiter's proximity tempers Rahu's ambition, giving visionary leadership. However, Ketu behind in the 9th suggests spiritual conflict or dogma that may haunt the career path until the native realigns with deeper purpose. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects. Scorpio rising. Rule 14 is pivotal for Scorpio ascendant because Mars, the Lagna Lord, is a fiery and action-oriented graha. Its relationships with other planets strongly impact whether its initiative leads to focused progress or volatile disruption. Friendly planetary influences like Jupiter and Sun enhance Scorpio's transformative power, while enemies like Mercury or Venus can agitate emotional equilibrium or decision-making clarity. Rule 15 becomes especially relevant due to Scorpio's fixed and intense nature. Hemming by benefics brings steady depth and intuitive control, while malefic flanking can create prolonged psychological battles, family karma, or health imbalances, especially in angular and trick houses. Mars in the 1st house, Scorpio, flanked by Ketu in 12th and Venus in 2nd. Mars is in own sign, enhancing strength, stamina, and resilience. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking. Ketu, malefic, and Venus, enemy, hem the ascendant lord. Rule 14 confirms Venus as an enemy to Mars and Ketu as an erratic amplifier. This setting creates intense drive, raw sexuality, and survival instinct, but also challenges with relationship harmony and emotional vulnerability. The personality is magnetic yet guarded, thriving through adversity but needing emotional discipline. Venus in the 2nd house, Sagittarius, flanked by Mars in 1st and Mercury in 3rd. Venus rules the 7th and 12th houses and is placed in the sign of Jupiter, a neutral graha. Rule 15 gives it malefic benefic flanking. Mars, enemy, behind, and Mercury, enemy, ahead, producing a challenging environment. Rule 14 confirms Venus is inimical to both. Speech and family life may involve tension, misunderstandings, or indulgent tendencies. Marital expectations may be idealistic yet strained, especially if the moon is weak or 7th lord is afflicted. Mercury in the 3rd house, Capricorn, flanked by Venus in 2nd and Sun in 4th. Mercury rules the 8th and 11th houses, both functionally malefic for Scorpio. In Capricorn, it is in a friendly sign ruled by Saturn. Rule 15 shows mixed flanking, Venus and Sun. Rule 14 confirms Venus is hostile to Mercury, while Mercury is neutral to Sun. This Mercury expresses itself through structured and disciplined communication, but may experience friction in sibling relationships or learning curves in early education. Gains come through steady intellect, though not without argumentative leanings. Sun in the 4th house, Aquarius, flanked by Mercury in 3rd and Moon in 5th. Sun rules the 10th and sits in a sign ruled by Saturn, its enemy. However, it is flanked by Mercury and Moon, natural benefics, forming a Śubha Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows that Mercury is friendly and Moon is neutral to Sun. Despite dignity challenges, this placement brings confidence in career pursuits, intellectual foundations from the home, and maternal influence. With Cartari support, emotional pride becomes constructive rather than arrogant. Moon in the 5th house, Pisces, flanked by Sun in 4th and Jupiter in 6th. Moon rules the 9th house and is placed in Jupiter's sign, giving spiritual and intuitive intelligence. Rule 15 gives benefic mixed flanking, Sun, mild malefic, and Jupiter, benefic. Rule 14 shows Moon is friendly with Sun and neutral to Jupiter. Creativity, intuition, and higher knowledge flourish here, especially in education or children. However, minor emotional turbulence may come through power dynamics or ideological disagreements. Jupiter in the 6th house, Aries, flanked by Moon in 5th and Saturn in 7th. Jupiter owns the 2nd and 5th houses and sits in the fiery sign of Aries. Rule 15 gives a benefic mixed hemming, Moon, benefic, and Saturn, malefic. Rule 14 states Jupiter is neutral to both. This Jupiter provides moral clarity in facing opposition, but may undergo karmic tests in wealth or romance due to Saturn's flanking. Ethical service professions and teaching roles are highlighted, especially when Jupiter aspects the 10th. Saturn in the 7th house, Taurus, flanked by Jupiter in 6th and Rahu in 8th. Saturn owns the 3rd and 4th houses and is in Venus's sign, neutral territory. Rule 15 gives Pāpa Kartari hemming. Jupiter is neutral, but Rahu is destabilizing. Rule 14 shows Saturn's neutrality to Jupiter and mild difficulty with Rahu. Partnerships may be karmic and delayed, often marked by duty or separative tendencies. Still, Saturn here can build long-lasting bonds based on structure and realism if supported by strong Venus or Mars. Rahu in the 8th house, Gemini, flanked by Saturn in 7th and Mars in 9th. Rahu in the 8th seeks control, mystery, and mastery of hidden knowledge. Rule 15 shows flanking by Saturn and Mars, both malefics, forming intense Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Though Rule 14 doesn't apply directly to nodes, their lords, Mercury and Mars, are enemies. This suggests obsessive tendencies in research, sex, or transformation, possibly coupled with father figure conflicts or challenges with authority. However, when channeled, this Rahu gives strategic power and occult proficiency. Horoscope analysis, friendship and hemming effects, Pisces rising. Rule 14 is deeply significant for Pisces ascendant, with Jupiter as the Lagna lord and ruler of both 1st and 10th houses. Planets that are friendly to Jupiter, like Moon, Mars, and Sun, help support dharma, spiritual growth, and leadership. Enemies like Venus and Mercury, even when well-placed, can introduce subtle conflict or overindulgence that disturbs Pisces' innate idealism. Rule 15 operates strongly in this water sign, where emotional sensitivity and imagination run deep. Śubha Kartari Yoga offers protection and grounding to an otherwise dreamy temperament, especially in houses governing intelligence, career, and relationships. Pāpa Kartari hemming, on the other hand, brings delays, emotional stress, or confusion, particularly around partnerships, education, and self-identity. Jupiter in the 1st house, Pisces, flanked by Ketu in 12th and Saturn in 2nd. Jupiter is in its Mul Trikona in the Lagna, very strong for spiritual grace, optimism, and dharmic self-expression. Rule 15 shows mixed hemming, Ketu malefic and Saturn malefic, creating Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 indicates Jupiter is neutral to Saturn and largely untouched by Ketu's erratic energy. Despite the strength, the native may feel spiritually burdened or face delayed self-confidence and family stability. Nevertheless, Jupiter's placement ensures long-term growth and a noble public image if emotional isolation is addressed. Venus in the 4th house, Gemini, flanked by Rahu in 3rd and Sun in 5th. Venus rules the 3rd and 8th houses and sits in Mercury's sign, neutral territory. Rule 15 shows flanking by Rahu and Sun, both malefics, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 confirms Venus is hostile to Sun and unstable with Rahu. This may disturb peace at home, complicate maternal connections, or bring tension in emotional bonding. While intelligence and charm remain, there may be subtle dissatisfaction unless supported by Moon or Jupiter aspects. Sun in the 5th house, Cancer, flanked by Venus in 4th and Mercury in 6th. Sun rules the 6th and sits in the sign of Moon, a natural friend. Rule 15 gives flanking by Venus, enemy, and Mercury, enemy, forming Pāpa Kartari Yoga. Rule 14 shows Sun's difficulty with both flanking planets. Although the 5th house governs intelligence and children, the hostile hemming can cause ego battles, parenting struggles, or overexertion in academics. However, if well aspected by Jupiter or Mars, the native becomes a confident leader in education, healing, or public service. Mercury in the 5th house, Cancer, flanked by Sun in 4th and Moon in 6th. Mercury rules the 4th and 7th houses and is placed in the sign of its enemy, the Moon. Rule 15 again shows mixed hemming: Sun, malefic, and Moon, benefic. Rule 14 confirms Mercury is neutral to Sun and enemy to Moon, making this a conflicted placement. Intellectual ability is sharp but overly analytical. Emotions may interfere with decision-making. Marriage and mental health may suffer unless Jupiter aspects or Venus strengthens Mercury's rational function. Moon in the 9th house, Scorpio, flanked by Saturn in 8th and Jupiter in 10th. Moon rules the 5th and is placed in its debilitation sign. Rule 15 shows flanking by Saturn, malefic, and Jupiter, benefic, a mixed hemming. Rule 14 indicates Moon is friendly with Jupiter and neutral with Saturn. Despite debilitation, Jupiter's proximity uplifts the Moon, giving philosophical depth, compassion, and resilience. The native may face early losses or emotional detachment from mentors, but eventually transforms into a spiritual guide, educator, or healer. Jupiter in the 10th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Moon in 9th and Mars in 11th. Jupiter is in its own sign and rules both the ascendant and the 10th, one of the strongest Raja Yoga configurations. Rule 15 displays Śubha Kartari Yoga. Moon and Mars are benefics to Jupiter. Rule 14 confirms Moon is friendly and Mars is neutral to Jupiter. This configuration provides noble leadership, administrative capacity, and spiritual grounding in career. Public life, teaching, or judiciary paths are strongly supported. The native leads through wisdom and fairness. Mars in the 10th house, Sagittarius, flanked by Jupiter in 9th and Saturn in 11th. Mars rules the 2nd and 9th houses and sits in Jupiter's sign, friendly territory. Rule 15 offers mixed flanking: Jupiter, benefic, and Saturn, malefic. Rule 14 says Mars is friendly with Jupiter and neutral with Saturn. This gives strategic force in career, excellent for action-based professions, management, or enterprise. While Saturn may delay recognition, it ensures sustainability. Mars provides courage, and Jupiter ensures integrity, balancing Dharma with dynamic execution.